Just one comment on that, if I may. We have a very large Pakistani Muslim population in the UK, and so we've, like I said earlier about other issues, we've been learning fast about aspects of this. Let me give you an example. One of the most significant events in Pakistan in recent years was the assassination of the governor of the Punjab, Salman Taseer, who was assassinated some years ago by one of his own bodyguards, because the governor had made comments in the wake of the Asir Bibi case to the tune of the fact that the blasphemy laws in Pakistan ought to alter, and for this he was assassinated by this person who was meant to be looking after him. His name is Qadri. Now I mention this because Qadri was himself then tried and executed, and among the clerics who spoke at the massive rallies in Pakistan after the funeral of the assassin were two men who every summer come to the UK and tour. I've written about this at the Gatestone Institute website several times, and there's no way to pick up on this point. But every year, the two people who were standing, whipping up a crowd of thousands and thousands of Muslims in Pakistan, saying that we would like to emulate the assassin, not the assassination, the person who was assassinated, but we would like to emulate the assassin. Those two clerics come, I think for the last 5 years, to the UK. They do big sell-out tours of mosques all across England.
From death threats to democracy, the battle for Islamic reform. Can Islam reform without external pressure? While ex-Muslims now speak openly where riots once erupted, parallel societies and comfortable ghettos threaten integration. From Pakistan's managed democracy to Britain's mosque problems, these fearless voices expose why religious freedom can't trump human rights. Don't miss this powerful conclusion to an unflinching dialogue about faith, freedom, and the future.
Do we already have questions? I see the time is flying shockingly quickly. Already there are questions. Are you willing to go to the questions? Melissa, would you please?
Hello, I'm Melissa O'Sullivan, and I'm from Decatur, Alabama. And I and Hersey Ali, apologies to you for the fact that the Southern Poverty Law Center, based in Alabama, puts you on their list of anti-Muslim extremist hate speech or something. And is this not, from the American left, the same thing as blasphemy laws, which you apparently have transgressed?
Well, thank you very much, and I absolutely do not hold you or anyone else from Alabama for the misconduct of the Southern Poverty Law Center, and I think they are going to implode, and it's beginning. I'm afraid I don't want to repeat myself, but like I said, I think at some point we have to get to the substance of this debate, and the substance is what it is. It is for our side to have the courage to stand up for the legacy of freedom, for the legacy of critical thinking, for the legacy of reason, for the legacy of democracy. And if we fail to stand up for it, then we should not be surprised that we are challenged, and we should not be surprised if things fail.
I saw another hand in the air. Please. I'm glad that there are a lot of questions. We still have time for them.
Being labeled anti-Muslim for factual criticism shows the challenge we face. Honest discussion is increasingly stigmatized. Just as the Enlightenment required confronting religious power, defending democratic values today means addressing uncomfortable truths. We must choose between maintaining critical discourse or accepting self-censorship. History shows that avoiding difficult conversations doesn't prevent conflicts, it ensures them. The legacy of freedom and reason requires courage to discuss challenging topics openly.
My question is for everyone at the fireside. It's on the likelihood of any kind of reformation within Islam comparable to that seen in Christianity in relation to laws, Sharia, etc.
Mr. Pipes?
The question is whether there can be a reformation in Islam as in Christianity. I actually would say the better question, if I might, is can there be a change in Islam as in Judaism? Because Judaism and Islam both have sacred laws, halakha in Judaism, Sharia in Islam. Christianity does not. And Jews went through, in the 18th and 19th century, a transformation. Most, some still stick to it entirely, but most modernized the religion. And I think it's completely possible, as you heard me say earlier, that Muslims can make that same transformation. Put it differently, 500 years ago, all three great monotheistic religions allowed some sort of slavery, servitude, and all of them banned in some way interest on money. Two of them changed. Judaism and Christianity are changed. For example, take the issue of slavery. In the United States, we had a very major war over slavery. It was not simple. It was not easy. It was painful. But that has happened, and no one now says, well, on second thought, maybe we should try slavery again. It's over. In Islam, there's been a debate over slavery. There's been a debate over interest on money. But it's just at its beginnings. It's far from being resolved. So the Muslims are behind fellow monotheists in making these transitions. I might add that I, too, was on the Southern Poverty Law Center list of 15 anti-Muslim extremists, and I congratulate Majid Nawaz for his suing them and getting almost $4 million US.
The Jewish reform movement offers an interesting parallel, but there's a crucial difference. Judaism evolved within secular societies that enforce change externally. The US Civil War example is telling. Change came through force, not voluntary reform. Islam faces unique challenges because many Muslim-majority countries lack this secular pressure for reform. The Majid Nawaz victory shows progress in defending legitimate criticism from false Islamophobia accusations, but real reform requires both internal willingness and external pressure.
As reparations, and they took that away, and it's no longer active, and there is no more list of 15 anti-Muslim haters.
Do you have anything to add, Douglas? Okay, then the next question, please.
I was wondering what you experts would recommend to try and encourage the Muslims who would like to have more freedom to be able to sort of stick their heads above the parapet, because their heads are a bit threatened, and of course the clerics probably like the big business and don't want their posts minimized. Thank you.
Douglas?
Can I make one suggestion? There's one suggestion that's it's been happening for a little while. Or let me put it this way. 20 years ago in London, a little bit less, there was an event at the London School of Economics, which was an event organized, I think, by the Islamic Society. And somebody stood up, I wasn't actually there myself, but a friend was, somebody stood up at it and said, as a gay Muslim, and there was just a riot. The event had to stop because everyone was trying to hit the guy, get the guy. So the event was over. I mention this because there's been a similar feeling. I think when Ayaan first rose to prominence in the Netherlands, people couldn't believe that somebody was saying what you were saying. And I mention this because, my gosh, it could have been faster. I wish it had been faster. I wish more people had done it. But a change that exists now is that it's now not uncommon at events I speak at in London and in other parts of Europe, and indeed in America, to have somebody stand up in the audience and say at some point, as an ex-Muslim. Now, it's not very common. It's not absolutely fine. But my point is that the transgressions across the hardest bits of the boundary, because some people have made them visibly, it has led a way across the wall. And I have no statistical evidences, only the anecdotal one, but it struck me very much in recent years It's not people sidling up to you after an event and saying, I used to be Muslim, but now I'm not so much. It's a public thing. It's still nerve-wracking. It's still lots of places you wouldn't do it. But the point I suppose I wanted to make on this is that we all know that cowardice is catching. You know, one person's very cowardly at the top of a society and everybody else gets the bug. But the opposite is also true. And when people see people saying things that they think might be true, intuit might be true, and are amazed at first, they start to think for themselves a little bit more. And they start to see other people who've made their way across the minefield and survived.
And it's coming along, and I'm just looking at the audience, and I don't know how much you follow world events. So my name is Ayaan Hirsi Ali, and when I open the New York Times and I read about the story of a girl from Saudi Arabia who escapes through Kuwait.
We're witnessing a gradual but significant shift in Muslim communities. 20 years ago, a gay Muslim speaker caused riots at LSE. Today, ex-Muslims speak openly at events. This evolution shows how courage breeds courage. Each person who speaks out makes it easier for others. The Saudi woman gaining asylum in Canada represents a new generation, challenging religious constraints. While progress varies geographically, social media and global connectivity make it harder to maintain ideological control.
And Malaysia and asks for asylum in Australia and finds it in Canada, you can just about imagine my delight. And that's a kind of spontaneous thing. And it's happening now over and over again. 1 or 2 or 3 of them make it to the New York Times and the general media, but you know that it's happening. You know that things are moving. And I think that we need to invest more in that than what we've been doing, and I'm going to put Daniel Pipes on the spot, that our governments have been investing more in Islamists and Islamist governments rather than in this type of dynamic.
Absolutely true. Islamists are seen as the genuine Muslims, as the ones the Catholic Church wants to have interfaith dialogue with, the ones that the governments want to have work with the police with, and so forth. It is the Islamists who are privileged and the Reform Muslims who are pushed out. It was the Islamists who get the money. Islamic Relief gets money from probably every Western government other than Eastern Europe, Central Eastern Europe. It gets large amounts of money, and it is Islamist. Yes, it's a great problem. And so part of my work, as it is Ayaan's, is to try and win support, financial, psychological, diplomatic, and so forth, media for the Reform Muslims who are ignored. It's a tragedy. They are the hope of the future. As Ayaan said earlier today, I'll put it in my words, there's a civil war between Muslims. What does it mean to be a Muslim in 2019?
There's a fundamental disconnect in Western policy. We fund Islamic organizations that often oppose modernization, while neglecting reformers pushing for change. This civil war within Islam between 7th and 21st century interpretations is crucial, yet Western governments consistently back conservative institutions like Islamic Relief. While non-Muslims can't resolve internal Islamic debates, our funding choices matter enormously. By prioritizing institutional Islamic organizations over reformers, we're effectively subsidizing resistance to modernization.
Do you want to go back to the 7th century or forward to the 21st century? Do you want to be applying the Sharia, or do you wish to be changing it and just applying selected parts of it? This is the crucial battle, and we who are not Muslims cannot answer those questions, but we can help one side or the other, and unfortunately we're helping the retrograde side of the Islamists, the totalitarian side of the Islamists.
Anybody else? Yes, the gentleman over there. He said he doesn't want to add anything. Yes, the gentleman over there.
Thank you. Peter Molnar, Radio Tilos. And I would like to ask all of you, but especially Hershey Ali, you said that you thought, if I recall it well, that you thought that the majority of Muslims, or most would like to live in peace as well and in freedom. So how then would an abuse of what Islam means, or what Islam can mean, turn those Muslims who would like to live in peace and freedom like us into danger in our Europe, considering especially that with all the development in, let's say, Christianity, I mean, mostly Christian Europe managed to produce the biggest horrors of the 20th century, and that includes the Holocaust that not Muslims did.
I came as a Muslim to Europe.
This highlights how the current framing of Muslim-European relations as inherently antagonistic is problematic. While Europe's own dark history, including the Holocaust, shows no culture has a monopoly on either violence or virtue, using past European atrocities to deflect criticism of current Islamic practices doesn't address the real challenges of modernization. The focus should be on supporting individual rights and freedoms regardless of religious background.
My identity in 1992 Europe wasn't, I didn't come in thinking I'm a Muslim, this is Islam versus Europe. I was just a girl running away from the family tradition. And I was lucky enough in the relationships, the immediate relationships that I made, that no one said to me, you've got to respect your family, respect your culture, respect your religion. None of the people who helped me out said that. When I talked to them about my problems, they said, well, it's up to you. If this man has come to get you and you don't want to go with him, let's call the police. But then what was on the table was, would I then go with the police or would I go with the man who was chosen for me? I went with the police, and I understood very deeply, I was old enough, that that choice was putting me up in front, I was facing my family, my tribe, my clan, my religion. That's not what's happening today. There are large enough numbers of Muslims. And so when people come to Europe and they are confronted, and it happens on a daily basis, it's a big shock. There's no lie about it. You come from a place like Africa, South Asia, the Middle East, you walk into, from Hungary onwards, I mean, it's different. It's a big shock. But if you can disappear into a ghetto of fellow Muslims.
Today's situation is markedly different. Larger immigrant communities create cultural bubbles where newcomers can avoid integration entirely. These comfortable ghettos offer an illusion of maintaining homeland culture, enabled by Western society's reluctance to demand integration. This well-intentioned tolerance actually prevents genuine integration and perpetuates parallel societies, making it harder for individuals to break free from traditional constraints than it was 30 years ago.
Fellow ethnic groups, and they can tell you, you can live like you did before you came here, but in peace. You live in the illusion, and the country that you come into with the ghetto lets you live in the illusion. That's the story of immigration from Muslim countries. It's the equation of integration and how we're going to handle it and all of that. And then there's the story of the Holocaust. And that, I have to say to all of you here, and I say to all my Western friends, is number one, the anti-Semitism we are seeing today, the most on message, most potent anti-Semitism we see today is Islamist-driven anti-Semitism. There are all kinds of other flavors, white supremacist, left-wing, right-wing, and all the rest of it. But it is the Islamist-driven anti-Semitism that gives all of this latent anti-Semitism an excuse to come out of the woodwork. Jeremy Corbyn would never have come out today. He would never have come out today to express what he actually feels about the state of Israel, about Zionism, and about Jews in general. But he can do it now because he can hide behind the Islamist-driven anti-Semitism. So we have to pay attention to that. And that is a different subject altogether, for which I think perhaps tonight I've got to seed. But I don't want you to. Let's not do this. Let's not talk about immigration.
Today's Islamist anti-Semitism is concerning precisely because it provides cover for other forms of latent anti-Semitism to resurface, as seen with figures like Jeremy Corbyn. However, it's inappropriate to draw direct parallels between current integration challenges and the Holocaust. These are distinct historical and social phenomena that deserve separate, careful consideration. Conflating them diminishes the unique horror of the Holocaust while also preventing clear analysis of contemporary challenges.
And integration, and the integration of Muslim minorities into European society in one breath with the Holocaust. I don't think you can come off the Holocaust that easily.
Maybe one more question. The gentleman over there. In the interest of time, maybe we'll close the event soon.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity. I was just wondering about the case of Pakistan, which is just like Masjid Nawaz mentioned in your debate. There is a very well functioning parliamentary system. However, Sharia law since the military regime of Zia-ul Haq, 1977, is the rule of the land as well. So on the one hand, we can see a well-functioning parliamentary democracy, just like Masjid mentioned that the majority of people voted for the centrist parties and the Islamists lost their seats. And on the other hand, we can also see that it's an Islamic country with Islamic law. So how does it work out in reality? Thank you.
Pakistan is like many other countries of the greater Middle East in that there is a form of democracy. There is a parliament, there are parties, there are big debates, but you don't vote for the big guy. He's there without elections. He has ultimate control over the military, the police, the courts. The Prime Minister, who you do vote for, deals with education and infrastructure. The range of candidates is a narrow one. You have to accept the basic ideology of the state.
Pakistan represents a complex case of managed democracy. While there's a parliamentary system with elections and parties, real power remains concentrated in military and religious institutions established under Zia-ul Haq's 1977 regime. Despite voters favoring centrist parties and rejecting Islamists, fundamental state structures remain unchanged. The public can participate in politics, but within strict boundaries. Candidates must accept state ideology. Voter bases are carefully managed, and key institutions, military, police, courts, remain outside democratic control.
And the voters have to be selected as well. So it's a form of democracy. It's not as though there's no democracy. There is some way for the public to participate and express itself, but it's limited. It is a shadow of democracy, and that's the case in Pakistan. So Islamic law, Sharia, can take precedence over this shadow democracy.
Definitely.
Just one comment on that, if I may. We have a very large Pakistani Muslim population in the UK. And so we've, like I said earlier about other issues, we've been learning fast about aspects of this. Let me give you an example. One of the most significant events in Pakistan in recent years was the assassination of the governor of the Punjab, Salman Taseer, who was assassinated some years ago by one of his own bodyguards, because the governor had made comments in the wake of the Asir Bibi case to the tune of the fact that the blasphemy laws in Pakistan ought to alter, and for this he was assassinated by this person who was meant to be looking after him. His name is Qadri. Now I mention this because Qadri was himself then tried and executed. And among the clerics who spoke at the massive rallies in Pakistan after the funeral of the assassin were two men who every summer come to the UK and tour. I've written about this at the Gatestone Institute website several times. And there's no way to pick up on this point. But every year, the two people who were standing, whipping up a crowd of thousands and thousands of Muslims in Pakistan, saying that we would like to emulate the assassin, not the assassination, the person who was assassinated, but we would like to emulate the assassin. Those two clerics come, I think for the last 5 years, to the UK. They do big sellout tours of mosques all across England. 3 years ago when they came, they were welcomed. First of all, it sounds like I'm here tonight just to attack subsequent holders of the title of Archbishop of Canterbury, but allow me one more go. The guy who succeeded the person I was attacking earlier, who's now the Archbishop of Canterbury, welcomed these two clerics at Lambeth Palace on the beginning of their tour. And I mention this because in no other circumstance in a society like mine would this happen. If there was a crazy Christian or any other group, and there were men who were pro-assassinating officials, they would not be welcomed by Christian leaders or political leaders. They wouldn't be allowed to speak as they were in the Prime Minister's own constituency, Theresa May's own constituency at a mosque. So this is another example of this thing of us having to catch up very fast with unalterable facts about our society. And whether we can do it or not, I don't know, but heck of an experiment, isn't it?
I thank the audience for the active participation, and I apologize, but our guests and I guess all of us are quite tired. It's 10:30. So if you wish, I would give the floor for very short closing remarks for our guests. Musab, would you begin?
As long as you promise to keep it short.
When religious extremists who celebrated Taseer's assassin could freely preach in UK mosques, even in the Prime Minister's constituency, it shows how Western tolerance can enable the spread of anti-democratic values. The speaker emphasizes that human rights must take precedence over religious law, whether Islamic or otherwise. This highlights a crucial challenge. Western societies must balance religious freedom with protecting democratic values, while preventing the legitimization of extremist views.
You know, the reason we are here, not because we are against the Muslim people, the law was made for man. Man was not made for the law. I don't remember who said that. Whether if it's Islamic law or other laws, man should always be above and beyond. We have sacrificed the law, and we went against the flow of our society. Somebody like Ayan, really courageous and very inspiring, actually, to hear about you, to know that you exist, because sometimes you start to feel, oh my God, I'm alone in this, but we are not alone. It's a destructive force, and everybody promised us self-destruction. They said, that's it. You will be shunned, you will be killed, you won't have a chance even to live. But here we are living, and we are living a much higher potential than any Islamic promise or any actually other human law that promises anything. We live and we continue to inspire others to think for themselves, to doubt, not to be afraid, and to come to freedom. This is why we exist. We're not here to debate, what's wrong and what's right. It's all bunch of garbage, made in the 7th century. I cannot believe, some people really believe in it. But they're in desperate need for leadership. They're confused. They don't know what to do. This is why they're full in this web of delusion. We broke out of this web of delusion, Ayan and I and a few others.
Despite death threats and predictions of failure, those who've broken free from restrictive religious frameworks have not only survived but thrived. This isn't just about Islam, it's about freeing all humans from dogmatic thinking, whether religious or intellectual. The 7th century mindset persists not because it's valid, but because people seek guidance in their confusion. The success stories of those who've broken free demonstrate that there's life and greater potential beyond religious constraints.
And I look forward the day that millions of not only Muslims, but also many other human beings who are stuck in religious dogma and intellectual dogma to break free and come to freedom, to a place beyond mind and beyond intellect. Thank you so much for listening to us.
Daniel? Ayan?
I echo what Mus'ab has said. We live in an age of globalization, and some of us, and our work is dismissed as, we are being parochial and nationalist. No way. We are being globalist, just as Mus'ab said, where we connect and congeal with ideas of freedom and critical thinking. And I want to thank Matthias Corvina's Collegium for doing exactly that, bringing all of these people with from different backgrounds and all over the world to come and congeal and fight for what we believe in, which is the ideas of liberty, the Enlightenment, freedom, critical thinking. And thank you so much for giving us this platform.
The closing remarks highlight an important distinction. Advocating for universal values isn't nationalism, it's true globalism. The Matthias Corvinus Collegium exemplifies this by bringing together diverse voices from around the world to promote fundamental values of freedom, enlightenment, and critical thinking. This international collaboration demonstrates how institutions can bridge cultural divides while upholding universal principles. Rather than rejecting globalization, this approach embraces it by creating platforms where people from different backgrounds can unite in defense of shared values, showing how global cooperation can strengthen rather than diminish the fight for individual liberty and intellectual freedom. So, any thoughts on what the panel just discussed? Share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you never miss any of our future debates.